Hi, today I'm going to do a book review and some other thoughts on a book called The Voyage of the Argo by Apollonius of Rhodes. This is a penguin classic. Here's a penguin in my room that is shadowing me during this review. Sometimes when I read a book, I feel like I have to explain why I chose to read the book. And I might do that towards the end. But let's move forward to just this book. Number one, I skip the introductions on these penguin classics, this one included. Skip the introduction. For a person who's never read the book, there's just too much academic things that make it much more difficult to read. So skip the introduction. Go right to the story. Of course, I know that The Voyage of the Argo is also called Jason of the Argonauts. I read some of the reviews on Goodreads, and one of the things that most people do is they compare it to the Odyssey. And you know, it's kind of unfair. They're just different books. They're different stories, and I'm not even going to go there. You know, the basic story is Jason is in the kingdom of King Peleus, and King Peleus is obsessed with the Golden Fleece, and he gets Jason to promise that Jason will capture the Golden Fleece and return it to the King Peleus. So Jason agrees, and they build a boat. The boat's called the Argo. They go through all the names of the crew of the Argo. It's really a tough part to get through because they're all very strange names, and they're all the son of. So it's like this person's name, and he's the son of blah, blah, blah. And so actually in Wikipedia, someone took the time to write down all the names, and you can see them here, and go through all the names. And you know, some of these people, they just get mentioned at the very beginning. They're only mentioned a couple times during the story. But that was a tough section. For me, this book is kind of uneven. They start in Thessaly, then they enter the Black Sea through Symplegades. That's an exciting part. Then they go and they have an interaction with Phineas, the blind seer, who's tormented by the harpies. That was a great scene. There's one part where they leave Hercules, and that was kind of an interesting thing as far as the story goes, because you know, Hercules was adding to the story, but after they abandoned Hercules, one of the crewmen said he was kind of getting too much attention, and we want Jason to get the attention. So that was kind of been one motivation for leaving Hercules. But I was pretty shocked when they left Hercules behind. They go to Colchis, where the Golden Fleece is, and it's very great. Then he encounters the king there and Medea, and it's very well done. Then they head back to Thessaly, and it kind of ends abruptly. That was kind of strange. But I think it's a good story. There were parts that were tough to read, but you just kind of keep going through, and like it does capture the collection of men together and how they work together on a ship, and they did discuss things together to solve problems. And Jason is not necessarily a really strong, developed character. You know, he sometimes he does kind of seem weak, and when Medea comes along, she really steps into the heroic role to help Jason acquire the fleece. And so that was an interesting part of the story. And there were parts of it that were tense. They were threatened on the sea and the rocks. I didn't know what was going to happen. And then the tension was very well done. There were certain things that that the Greeks do, to me, a modern story would not do. One example is Medea decides to help Jason, and she creates a potion and does some other magic to help Jason get the fleece. And this was a real betrayal of her father. And then later, after they get the fleece, Medea agrees to help Jason murder her brother. The interesting thing about that to me was we didn't really know Medea's motives. Like, why was she willing to kill her brother? So to me, like in a modern story, you would have developed Medea's motivation. Maybe her brother and her father, she didn't like them for some reason, some event. To me, I'm not complaining about the way it's done. It's just the way that these Greek stories are told. Sometimes it helps for me as a modern reader to know motivations, and it's not explained here. Medea's motivations, because what she does is really, it's really a harsh betrayal of her family. I mean, the only thing that they explain is that when Jason was arrived to get the golden fleece, Aphrodite convinced Eros to shoot the arrow into Medea so she would fall in love with Jason. And that's the main motivation, is that she was shot with the arrow from Eros, and that is why she would do anything she could to keep for Jason's cause. So that is, I guess that's the motivation. One of the reasons why I wanted to read this story for an art reason, and that is I'm very interested in the metaphysical artist Giorgio de Chirico. And Giorgio de Chirico was born in Volos, Greece. In that area is where Jason began his journey. So Giorgio de Chirico had a metaphysical connection to this story. He has one painting of the story, and as far as the rest of the video, I'm going to go into some of the other paintings that I found online of Jason and the Argonauts. Here's another map here of where Jason goes, and same path up to the Black Sea, over here to Colchis, through this up to the Danube River, and then comes out in the Italy, and then he goes up back in here, and I guess they were carrying the ship during these areas, or there's a river here where they're going up here, but some of these areas they were carrying the ship. Now this Libya, he has them going all the way around here in Libya. So there's a little, I'm just generalizing here, and here's a mythology map, and same thing. You have all the spots. Goes over to here in the Black Sea. Then he goes to the Danube River. Comes out here. Now this side, he doesn't go on the other side of Italy. He doesn't go on the east side of Italy. He's on the west side of Italy. And then he comes down here, and then they have him. I don't know how they have. Anyway, I don't want to get into too many details. The point here is that there's different maps of where he went. I like maps. If you know my channel, when I read these kind of books, I like these maps. I like to see where he went. It really helps me to get the story in my head. Colchis. He starts here in Greece, in Iolcos, or also called Volos. Then he goes to the Black Sea, Colchis, Danube, comes through Italy, then comes down here to Libya, then he returns. So if you want to go through Iolcos, so here's planet Earth, and if we go to Iolcos, Greece, where he begins, Iolcos, Greece, go to planet Earth, and here we go in. Now, this is Iolcos. If you back out a little bit, you can see this is part of Volos. Volos is where Giorgio de Chirico was born. So that's why he felt a connection to this area and to Jason and the Argonauts, because that's where they started. So if you go out there, they went through this strait and the Pagiastic Gulf. Then Jason went up to here, through these straits here, and into the Black Sea, and then he went to Colchis. See, that's right there. Colchis Fountain is there. You know, somewhere in this area is where the Golden Fleece was. Then he crossed the whole Black Sea, and he went onto this river here, the Danube River. which is right here. And he went in through there, all the way up here, all the way up here, through the river. Let's see if we can get the Danube River. See, here's the Danube River. So he came up here, and it comes out here. It does come out in Trieste, it looks like. Is that correct? I don't know. But anyway, it comes in through Italy. It goes to Istria. Let's put Istria. Comes out at Istria, according to that map. Istria is where he comes out, according to that map. Comes out around here in Istria. Then he Lake Tritonus. Down here it says Lake Tritonus. Let's see where that is. Doesn't come up on Google Earth. This is from the encyclopedia. Lake Triton. Let's see if we can just look around. Let's just see if we can look around and find out where Lake Triton is. According to the map, it's in Tunisia here somewhere. I don't see any lake. Here's a lake. Let's take a look again. If you go down here, Libya, it's right around here. Lake Triton. It's right in there. Let's see if we can find that estimate where that is. 1, 2, 3. I don't know. It's in this area. Lake Triton is kind of in this area, and then he comes back to goes back to the Mediterranean and returns to Thessaly. So that's kind of basics of where I like to spend some time. It helps me to remember the story about where he traveled. This is just an overview. Of course, when I read a book like this, I really want to read it again and get more details. And this is just an overview for a first-time read. So one other thing I wanted to do was kind of look at some paintings that were done, because I'm an art channel. And here's one, Jason and Medea, painted by John William Waterhouse. So this is kind of a, here he is, she's pouring her potion that's going to help Jason when he defeats the fire-breathing bulls. And she's making a potion to help him in his battle, defeat the bulls, and one is to give him a shield. Here's Medea rejuvenating Jason by Corrado Giaguinto in 1760. This subject was a very important for these historical painters in the genre of history. Here's a Attic red figure column crater attributed to the Orchard painter of Jason and the Golden Fleece. Here's Jason, the fleece, and then here's Medea, I believe. Here's the one we saw already by Jason and Medea by John William Waterhouse. Here's a etching where he's defeating the serpent. That's right before he gets the fleece. This is Salvatore Rosa, 1633 to 1664. I'm just looking at paintings. Here's King Peleus. Notices Jason and his missing sandal. That's how we identified Jason, because Jason had a missing sandal. So here's King Peleus, and here's Jason. That's an interesting, because that's a Roman painting. Pretty nice painting. Here's another vase, and this is Phineas and the Harpies. Phineas couldn't eat because the Harpies took food from him every time he tried to eat, and Jason helped him get food, and then he foresaw he had a he foresaw Jason's journey and successful trip to get the Golden Fleece, and that was a big help for Jason. Here's the Golden Fleece by Herbert James Draper at the Bradford Museums. Here's a Medea. What else do we have? Oh, here's a wall relief, Medea. This is a 2nd century Roman copy from the Greek relief. Here is, so like I said, I'm just doing an overview here. Here is Medea. Now there's more, Medea appears in other stories. We're only interested in her interaction with Jason. But here's the Medea page on Wikipedia. And we're not gonna dwell on that. We got plenty on our plate here with just Jason and the Argonauts and Medea. This section here, and what I want to say is, for all those web pages that I was accessing, I want to give credit to all the people who built those websites and put all the material together. It makes it so much easier to study a story like this. It's just amazing that we can have all this material in 2023, and I can easily look up all these paintings and maps. It's just absolutely amazing. But the next step is artificial intelligence, and here I am at OpenAI, ChatGPT, and at the bottom you can see I wrote, "Can you show me famous paintings of the Argonauts?" So let's see what happens here. Now it just shows me, what does it show me, these paintings? It shows me the names of the paintings. Jason by Edward Burne-Jones, Jason and the Argonauts by Pietro Angoni, the Argo by Konstantinos Valankos. Let's see if any of these are, if I look up these, that really doesn't work immediately. Let's see the one by Pietro Angioni. Well, doesn't really come up with anything. Okay, let's go to the Argo by Konstantinos Valankis. Let's see if that shows anything. Okay, here's a great image then. Here's a great image of the, look at that. That's the Argo. Wow. You know, it's a very tight ship. There's not much room. There's no structures on the top. It's just a fast ship. You know, when I was thinking about these Argonauts, they're kind of pirates going out, stealing something and coming home. But anyway, let's go back to ChatGPT, the Benjamin West, Jason and the Golden Fleece. And this doesn't show any painting by Benjamin West. So that's ChatGPT. I'd say only the best one was the Argo by Konstantinos Valankis. But now let's go over to Bard. I actually like Bard better, and I'll show you why. Can you show me famous paintings of the Argonauts on bard.google.com? What do we get? Okay, we get the Argo by Lorenzo Costa. Open a new tab. That's kind of basic compared to that other one. That was a better, that's a more basic image. But the thing about Bard is, Bard has shown me thumbnails of the paintings. Here's scenes from the story of the Argonauts by Angio di Antonio. And let's see that one. This is at the Metropolitan Museum. I'm not going to I'm just doing an overview here, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. Here's King Peleus on the right, I think. I don't know. It's kind of looked like everybody's dressed in medieval clothes. I don't know. I'm not going to... Let's keep moving. Here's Scene of the Argonauts by Jacopo Salanio. And this is also in the Met. Well, this one, sorry, oh God, I hope I don't make the Met look bad, but this page is not loading. Scenes from the start, so no problem on the Met. You know, I know the Met's a great museum. Just sometimes these things don't work. But anyway, so in this case, I think I like you got to use both sources, but I do like Bard at this point because I like the thumbnails. I'm just putting all this stuff together from things that other people have put together. So I'm very appreciative of all the material on the internet that helps me put together my video. So thanks for watching.